On February 2nd, 1922, the body of William Desmond Taylor was found alone in his apartment. He was a film director who was employed by Paramount Studios. At first, it was assumed he died of natural causes, of course, until they rolled him over to reveal a bullet hole in a pool of blood. He did live alone, though he was often visited at night by women who saw him as a thoroughly eligible bachelor or at the very least a trustworthy friend. They really must not have known about that family he abandoned when he moved to California in 1912, but that's a story for another time. On the night of his death, one such woman was at his home drinking and laughing. This is Mabel Normand. She was a comedian of the silent film era and a total badass, headlining films with people like Charlie Chaplin and Fatty Arbuckle. She was also a notorious party girl. She was known for her love of drink and, more scandalously, for her opium addiction. She was the last person known to see Taylor alive, and she left his house at 7:45 p.m. By around 8 p.m., neighbors report hearing, quote, car backfires near the Alvarado apartments, which, by the way, is now a Ross Dress for Less, so that's cool. All the neighbors who saw anything do report seeing someone, possibly a, quote, effeminate man in a long black coat. This is important because a lot of the suspects are females. Anyway, Taylor's body wasn't found until the next morning when his houseman, Henry Peavy, came to work. He found Taylor on the ground and went screaming into the courtyard. Somehow the studio was called before the police, and by the time anyone realized he was laying in a pool of blood, the whole scene had been thoroughly contaminated, and it's argued that the studios removed a lot of information that could have been helpful to the investigation prior to the police's arrival. This case has never officially been solved, so who are the suspects? Mabel, just by nature of being the last person to be there, is of course on the list, but to be honest, Mabel's way too cool for that. The main theory involving her is that someone came to settle a drug debt and Taylor was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and this was never substantiated, and Mabel was reported to be clean at the time. Mary Miles Minter, a young actress, and more importantly, her mother, Charlotte Shelby. Charlotte was an OG stage mom. She was obsessed with her daughter's career, but Mary was fairly obsessed with William Desmond Taylor. Charlotte was having none of this. She was often seen openly screaming at Taylor, often threatening to kill him if he came near her daughter. She was for a while the main suspect, and it's often still thought that she had something to do with it. Edward Sands, a former employee who used to steal from Taylor, was thought to be blackmailing him about hidden aspects of his past, possibly that family I mentioned, or some visits to some gay bathhouses is also up for debate. Finally, Margaret Gibson, known as Patricia Palmer, Pat Lewis, among many other aliases. If you have a lot of aliases, lady, it's not a great sign. Gibson was an actress who ran in similar circles to Taylor, and she was even acting with him in some movies before he became a director. She was also a criminal. She repeatedly worked with convicted blackmailers to extort money from men. In 1964, while on her deathbed, Gibson requested a priest to her side and reportedly confessed to killing Taylor. In this version of events, it was a part of an extortion attempt gone wrong. It is theorized that Taylor may have been gay or bisexual because of the visits to the bathhouses I mentioned, which in 1922 was a much bigger scandal than it would be today. Gibson would have had inside knowledge about Taylor from their time acting together and working together. People believe that Gibson and her accomplices knew and were attempting to use this against him at the time of his death. This story is infinitely more complex than the one reel can do justice to, so I really, really recommend you check out the book Tinseltown if you want to know more.